welcome to Herstory. Today on the show, we have the first Betty of skateboarding.
My name is Patti McGee, but they called me the first Betty of skateboarding because I was like an old school slang term for a girl who skateboarded. It kind of evolved to be more of a female skateboard groupie, but back in my day, it was all about skating.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into skateboarding.
I was born in 1945, grew up in San Diego, and began surfing in the 50s. In 1962, I began skateboarding after my brother built one at home by taking the wheels off of my roller skates and putting him on a plank of wood, and we just started skating.
Come again? Did you say built by your brother? Is he single? I am ready to springtime mingle.
No, it's my brother.
When you were skateboarding around in these early days, were there other girls like you?
Not a lot of people were skateboarding to begin with, certainly not many other girls, so a lot of times it was just me and a bunch of guys.
Now what kind of skateboard tricks were you doing, aside from just cutting up the asphalt?
We were just kind of figuring things out, so we would still do things like 360s and 180s, hanging 5, hanging 10, wheelies, nose wheelies, foot over foot, not to mention my signature move, which was doing a handstand on my skateboard.
Impressive, Patti, but let me show you how it's done, Herstory style. Welcome to a little thing I like to call sitboarding double ollie. Coming in for a landing. Perfect 10. But it was close. Now, 1964, when you were but 19 years old, you made Herstory.
That was the year that I won the first annual National Skateboarding Championships. In 1965, I decided to go pro. I became the very first female professional skateboarder.
I've never won anything in my life. I mean, the most I ever got was an honorable mention in a cat portrait painting contest. Even then, I was the only contestant. They just eliminated first place because mine was so bad. Thought I captured Mr. Mistopheles' true essence. During this time, you were also a magazine cover model, were you not?
I was a cover model for Life magazine and also for Skateboarding magazine, which still pinnacle of my career. I was able to talk a lot about how I felt like and still feel like skateboarding is as much for girls as it is for boys.
In that 1965 Life magazine piece, if I may read a direct excerpt, it describes this new sport as a menace. How do you say that?
Menace.
A menace to limb and even to life.
I skateboarded without a helmet and rarely wore shoes. But it was like the mid-60s. No one wore shoes.
Aside from skating willy-nilly sans helmet, what was life like as a professional female skateboarder?
Honestly, it wasn't too glamorous. I was sponsored by Vitapack and Hobie Skateboards. I was paid about $300 a month, toured around the United States, went to department stores and would do in-store demonstrations. I would go to different conventions, and I was on TV a few times, did some commercials. I didn't always fit in very well everywhere. When I went to New York, I was turned down by a number of cab drivers because I tended to not wear shoes because I like to skateboard barefoot. There were some downsides, but it was a pretty exciting year.
Your professional career essentially ended a year later in 1966. What happened?
Skateboarding was considered more of a trend than a long-term sport at the time. It really didn't come back into mainstream popularity until the 1990s and 2000s.
Tell me at least that your status as the first female professional skateboarder kept paying the bills.
To be honest, no. I sort of faded from the limelight and held a number of different jobs doing things like snow skiing and leathersmithing, turquoise mining. Most recently, my daughter Haley and I have started up the Original Betty Skateboarding Company, which supports women and girls in skateboarding. So it feels like I've really come historically full circle.
Brava.
Did I use your little Herstory word right?
The silver lining of this career cloud is that in 2010 you made Herstory yet again.
Yep, I became the very first woman inducted into the Skateboarding Hall of Fame.
Well, Patti, you are certainly a trail skater for women and girls, even though not a model of proper safety because you didn't wear a helmet.